After my rebirth, I awakened the damage transfer system. Any harm inflicted upon me would be returned tenfold to a designated target. The moment the male lead pushed me down the stairs for his beloved, intending to break my legs, I immediately set his beloved as the transfer target, and so, before everyone's eyes, the male lead held me, weeping as if his heart was breaking, while his beloved, standing unharmed at the top of the stairs, had her legs twisted grotesquely, screaming before she fainted dead away. Leaning weakly in the male lead's arms, I whispered, "You see, even heaven couldn't stand to watch." Chapter 1. The cold, hard edge of a step slammed into my spine, but the excruciating pain I expected never came. Damage transfer system successfully bound. Detected host has sustained fall and impact damage. Estimated injuries: comminuted fractures in both legs, grade 3 concussion. Specify the target for damage transfer. The damage received will be returned tenfold. As a mechanical voice echoed in my mind, I was being shoved by the crowd, stumbling at the edge of the stairs. The culprit, Shin-Chae, had already brushed past me, rushing to his beloved Lin Yue, the white moon of his heart, and firmly steadying the painting, something more precious to him than my life. Lin Yue, still shaken, clutched her chest and smiled at him with gratitude and dependence. They were the center of attention, the perfect couple made in heaven, and I, just someone casually pushed aside. Their backdrop so familiar. In my past life, I fell down the stairs like this. Spending half a year in the hospital, Shin-Chae visited me only once, tossing me a card and saying coldly, "I'll cover all medical expenses, but you're never to appear before Yue again." He thought I was jealous of Lin Yue, deliberately blocking his path to ruin her painting. Lying in bed, I watched their engagement news spread across the internet, my heart torn apart, eventually dying of sorrow. If I got a second chance at life, I wouldn't be that stupid again. Just before my body completely spiraled out of control, I gathered every last bit of strength I had and repeated it silently to myself. Lin Yue, transfer target set. Lin Yue, transferring damage. I closed my eyes, waiting for a completely different ending. The weightlessness of falling hit me, only to be caught in a warm, powerful embrace. It was Shin-Chae. He must have finally calmed Lin Yue down before remembering me, the girlfriend he had personally pushed down the stairs. Jiang-Wan, he held me in his arms, his voice shaking with an unprecedented panic. Before I could even open my eyes, a blood-curdling scream unlike any human voice rang out from the top of the stairs. We both looked up at the same time. There, Lin Yue, who had just moments ago been all smiles and charm, was now collapsed on the floor in a grotesque pose, her legs twisted unnaturally, like two sticks of dough snapped clean in half. She rolled her eyes back, let out a scream, and then completely passed out. The whole room fell silent, everyone stunned senseless by the eerie scene before them. Shin-Chae froze as well, holding me in his arms, but staring fixedly at Lin Yue upstairs, his mind blank. Leaning against his chest, I felt the violent rise and fall of his body from fear, and weakly forced out a pale smile. I lifted my hand and gently touched his face, which was full of shock. Shin-Chae, look, even heaven can't stand it anymore. The wail of the ambulance echoed through the entire art center. I and Lin Yue were rushed to the hospital together, the emergency room in complete chaos. The doctors stared at Lin Yue's x-rays, each with a grave expression. "This is bizarre. There are no signs of external trauma. How could both legs be shattered simultaneously? The bones are crushed like tofu pulp. She'll never walk again." She's strange too. She's in shock from the pain. Yet apart from her legs, there's not a single bruise on her body. In comparison, my situation was much less serious. The doctor examining me flipped through my x-rays repeatedly, then pinched my arms and legs, utterly perplexed. "Miss, are you sure you fell down dozens of stairs? Aside from a minor scrape on your elbow, you seem completely unharmed." Chapter 2. I leaned against the hospital bed, pale-faced, looking as if I'd been through a terrifying ordeal. Shin-Chae stayed right by my bed, and his face looked even worse than mine. He held my hand, his palm cold and damp, his eyes full of confusion and guilt. "Wan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." His phone kept vibrating wildly in his pocket. No need to guess, it was someone from Lin Yue's side calling. He picked it up several times, then put it back down each time, and in the end, he still chose to stay by my side. "Are you feeling unwell anywhere? Let the doctor examine you again." I shook my head, and my eyes turned red at just the right moment. "I'm fine, just a little scared." "What about Yue? How is she?" At the mention of Lin Yue, Shin-Chae's expression instantly darkened, and he closed his eyes in pain. "The doctor said her leg is ruined." He finished speaking, his lips pressed tightly together, his handsome face a mask of inner turmoil. He couldn't make sense of it. He clearly pushed me so why was it Lin Yue who ended up shattered to pieces? I wanted him to be unable to make sense of it. I wanted this thorn to be forever lodged in his heart, so that every breath he took was laced with guilt and confusion. Shinche, I said softly, my voice carrying just the right tremor, did I frighten you? He snapped back to reality, looked at me, and shook his head vigorously. No, don't overthink it, just rest well. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the hospital room door was kicked open. Lin Yue's mother, the woman always known for her elegant, aristocratic demeanor, charged in like a madwoman, her makeup smeared from crying, her hair disheveled. Without saying a word, she rushed up to my bedside and raised her hand to slap me. Shinche reacted quickly and stopped her. Auntie, please calm down, my daughter's leg is broken. How am I supposed to stay calm, Mrs. Lin's eyes were bloodshot as she pointed at me and cursed me out. It's all your fault, you jinx, you must be jealous of our Yue, so you pushed her on purpose, otherwise, how could she have suddenly broken her leg when she was perfectly fine? Her talent for twisting the truth was just as shameless as in my last life. Shinche frowned deeply and shielded me behind him. Auntie, you've got it wrong, it was me. I accidentally pushed Jiang Wan. You pushed her, Mrs. Lin seemed to have heard the most ridiculous joke. She looked me up and down, and the contempt and hatred in her eyes were almost tangible. Shinche, don't lie just to protect this woman. She was pushed, so how can she be sitting here perfectly fine? Where's my daughter? You saw with your own eyes that my daughter's leg was broken. Her hysterical cries drew the attention of everyone in the hallway. I hid behind Shinche, my eyes downcast, looking on the verge of tears, but inwardly, I sneered. Good, let her make a scene, the bigger, the better. Chapter 3. Shinche was left speechless by her interrogation and could only repeat, Auntie, it's not what you think, I'll take responsibility. Responsibility? How will you take responsibility? Can you give me back my healthy daughter, Mrs. Lin wouldn't let it go and reached out to grab my hair. In the chaos, her fingernails scraped across the back of my hand, leaving thin trails of blood. Host damage detected, scratch tenfold. Return in progress. I almost immediately locked onto the target in my mind. It wasn't Mrs. Lin, and it wasn't Shinche, it was Lin Yue in the neighboring ward, who had just undergone surgery and been given a heavy dose of anesthetic. The next second, there was suddenly a nurse's scream and the blare of alarms from the equipment next door. Then came Lin Yue's heartrending scream. That sound was even more shrill and desperate than the one at the art exhibition, as if she were being tortured. Mrs. Lin froze mid-motion, her face turning deathly pale. She no longer had time to deal with me and scrambled out in a panic. Yue, my Yue. The entire floor was thrown into chaos by this sudden turn of events. Doctors and nurses rushed into Lin Yue's ward, and finally, the world was quiet. I raised my hand, staring at the scratch on my wrist. It was healing at a visible pace. Shinche stood still, motionless. He stared at me intensely, his eyes no longer filled only with confusion and guilt, but now with a hint of fear. He saw it. He must have seen the moment Mrs. Lin scratched me. He also heard Lin Yue's scream that followed. One time could be coincidence. What about twice? I met his gaze, my eyes clear and innocent. Shinche, I whispered, am I a troublesome person? His Adam's apple moved, his lips trembled for a long moment, but not a single word came out. Lin Yue is in very bad shape. It's said that as soon as the anesthesia wore off, she suddenly started having excruciating pain all over her body for no apparent reason. She went into shock several times, and even the strongest dose from the pain pump did nothing. In the end, they had no choice but to give her another sedative, forcing her into a deep sleep. The Lin family was in complete chaos as the culprit. Shinche was naturally cursed out to no end by Lin Yue's parents. He didn't defend himself, he simply took it all in silence. Only after dealing with the Lin family's affairs did he drag his exhausted body back to my hospital room. He sat in the chair by the bed, saying nothing, just looking at me with an extremely complicated expression. The way he kept staring at me made me a little uneasy, so I took the initiative to ask, is Yue okay? He shook his head, his voice hoarse. The doctors can't figure out the cause either. He paused, lifted his gaze, and fixed me with an intense stare. Jiang Wan, tell me the truth. At the art exhibition, were you really hurt? My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my expression neutral, only letting my eyes redden with a wounded look. You pushed me down the stairs, what do you think? But the doctor said you only had scrapes. His voice rose sharply, laced with an urgency and suspicion he himself didn't seem to fully grasp. But Yue, Shinche, I cut him off, my voice trembling with tears. Are you doubting me, suspecting I used some underhanded trick to hurt Lin Yue? I'm not, he denied immediately, but his eyes darted away. Chapter 4, Yes, you are. I threw off the covers, got out of bed barefoot, and stood before him, looking up into his face. You pushed me down the stairs, nearly killed me, and now instead of caring about me, every word out of your mouth is about Lin Yue. You even suspect I'm the one who hurt her. What exactly am I to you? Just a tool you can toss aside at any moment for Lin Yue. My accusation cut into him like a knife. The color drained from his handsome face, and his lips trembled as he tried to explain himself, but couldn't, because every word I said was the truth. I'm sorry. In the end, those were the only 3 words he could force out, his voice heavy with helplessness. I let out a cold laugh and turned to leave. Where are you going? He said, grabbing my wrist. None of your business. I struggled to break free. I don't want to see you. Go find your Lin Yue. Just then, the ward door was pushed open. A few of Shinche's friends walked in, led by Lu Yen. They were carrying fruit baskets and health supplements. When they saw Shinche and me struggling, they all froze. Lu Yen is Shinche's closest brother and also the person who looks down on me the most. He glanced at me, his tone light and mocking. Well, what's this act now? Shinche, your girl sure knows how to make a scene, even with Yue in such a state. She still has the nerve to throw a tantrum with you. His words were clearly accusing me of being unreasonable and immature. I was so furious I trembled, and I violently pulled my hand away from Shinche's. Lu Yen, shut up, you're not welcome here. Lu Yen snorted, slamming the fruit basket down on the table with a loud thud. What, did I hit a nerve? Jiang Wan, don't pretend we don't know what you're really after. You're just jealous of Yue, aren't you? Using such low-down tactics to gain sympathy. How pathetic is that? He stepped closer, looking down at me with contempt in his eyes. Let me tell you, Shinche only has eyes for Yue. Even if you died right here, he wouldn't spare you a second glance. He leaned in too close, his warm breath brushing my face. I instinctively took a step back, but his foot deliberately tripped me. I stumbled backward, about to crash into the corner of the table behind me. Detecting host about to suffer impact damage, a cold glint flashed in my eyes. Target transfer. Lu Yen, I didn't hit the table corner. Shin Che grabbed me just in time, pulling me into his arms. Meanwhile, Lu Yen, standing still, was hit as if by a speeding truck head-on. He was hurled backward without warning, crashing violently into the wall opposite. With a dull thud, plaster crumbled and fell from the wall. Lu Yen collapsed to the ground like a heap of mud, blood gushing from his nose and mouth, unconscious instantly. The friends following behind him were all frozen in shock. They stared blankly at Lu Yen on the floor, then at me. Safe and sound in Shinche's arms, their faces a mask of horror and utter disbelief. Chapter 5, Yenji, quick, get a doctor. The hospital room descended into chaos once more. Shinche held me, yet his body trembled slightly. He lowered his head, and the look in his eyes as he gazed at me was beyond mere fear. It was sheer, unadulterated terror, the kind one feels upon seeing a ghost or a monster. He saw with his own eyes Lu Yen stick his foot out to trip me, and he also saw with his own eyes how Lu Yen went flying himself the moment I was about to fall. It was all too bizarre, so bizarre it defied all logic and reason. He knew, nestled in his arms. I felt his heartbeat quicken, a cold, imperceptible smirk curling at the corner of my lips. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted everyone who had ever hurt me to taste this inexplicable fear. The doctors arrived quickly and carried Lu Yen away on a stretcher. The preliminary diagnosis was 3 broken ribs and severe internal bleeding. Shinche's friends ran off after the ambulance, looking back at me as if they'd seen a ghost. In the hospital room, only Shinche and I remained. It was a long moment before he slowly released me, taking 2 steps back to put distance between us. His voice was as dry and grating as sandpaper. Jiang Wan, just what kind of person are you? I lifted my head, meeting his gaze full of fear, and offered a sweet, innocent smile. Shinche, what are you talking about? I don't understand. You did it, didn't you? He stared at me intently, as if trying to see right through me. Yue and Lu Yen, it was all you. What did I do? I tilted my head, my eyes clouded with confusion. I was just the one pushed down the stairs, the one who was tripped. Is being the victim somehow a crime? My words left him with no rebuttal. That's right. From beginning to end, I was the victim. So why is it that the ones paying the terrible price are the so-called perpetrators? Shinche's perception was crumbling. He looked at me, his eyes filled with struggle and pain. He didn't want to believe I was a monster, but everything happening before his eyes forced him to. Jiang Wan, he murmured, please, tell me, what on earth is going on? Watching him suffer, I felt no pity, only the thrill of revenge. I smiled softly. Shinche, maybe you should go to a temple and pray, because I might be someone favored by the gods. Chapter 6. Lu Yan's serious injuries caused the situation to spiral out of control. Shinche's friends spread rumors all over the hospital, calling me a bad omen and a monster. Whoever gets close to me ends up in trouble. First Lin Yue, then Lu Yan, two vivid examples right in front of everyone. No one can afford to doubt it. Rumors spread like wildfire in no time. Even the hospital nurses look at me strangely, keeping 3 meters away when changing my bandages. Shinche is under immense pressure. On one side, there's Lin Yue and Lu Yan, still unconscious, and the mounting pressure from their families. On the other, there's me, the eerie, unsettling girlfriend. He's visibly withering away, dark circles under his eyes, stubble sprouting on his chin. He no longer visits my room. I'm actually glad for the peace and quiet. On the day I was discharged, I handled all the paperwork myself. Shinche didn't come. He only had his assistant bring me a bank card and the keys to an upscale apartment in the city center. The assistant said to me respectfully, "Miss Jiang, Mr. Shin said he's a little busy lately and asked you to stay at the apartment for now. If you need anything, just contact him anytime." I took the keys and didn't even glance at the card. He's not busy. He's scared of me, isn't he? The assistant looked a little awkward and lowered his head, not daring to answer. I smiled and turned to leave. From beginning to end, I didn't show the slightest trace of reluctance that only made Shinche, who was watching from the shadows, even more uneasy. I knew he was there across the street from the hospital, in a cafe directly opposite. He was watching me through binoculars. He was testing me, observing me. He wanted to see if, without him, I'd break down and beg him not to leave, just like before. Too bad. He's going to be disappointed. I pulled my suitcase and hailed a cab without looking back, heading straight to the apartment he'd given me. The apartment was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a 360-degree panoramic view, luxuriously decorated and in a prime location. In my past life, I'd dreamed of having a home like this with him, but now, standing in this vast, cold space, I felt not a single ripple of emotion. After dropping off my luggage, the first thing I did was order the most expensive afternoon tea for myself, then soaked in a long, relaxing hot bath. I didn't reach out to Shinche, not a single call, not a single message. The more indifferent I acted, the more it tormented him. Sure enough, he showed up that very night. Chapter 7. He stood at the doorway reeking of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot, seeing me in a bathrobe, leisurely watching a movie in the living room. The resentment in his eyes was practically overflowing. "Well, aren't you living the life, Jiang Wan?" His voice was hoarse, thick with sarcasm. I hit pause and turned to look at him. "What else? Did you expect me to pine away for you, crying and begging for you to come back?" My words left him speechless, his chest heaving violently. He stepped inside, slammed the door shut, and backed me into a corner. The pungent smell of liquor mingled with his pleasant, woody cologne, enveloping me completely. "What exactly do you want?" He gripped my chin so hard it felt like he was about to crush my bones. "Do you get some kind of thrill out of tormenting me?" Pain shot through me. System detected that the host has taken damage from a pinch injury. Looking at his handsome face right in front of me, I suddenly smiled. "Yeah, I activated the system. Tenfold return in progress. This time, I didn't choose anyone, I chose him." The expression on Shinche's face instantly froze. His hand gripping my jaw suddenly froze, then jerked as if shocked. Letting out a pained grunt, he let go of me, clutching his own jaw, staggering back a few steps, his face etched with disbelief. The excruciating pain of bones being crushed sent him half awake in an instant. "You." He stared at me in terror, as if seeing a complete monster. I rubbed my red, bruised jaw, smiling even more brightly. "Now, do you believe me?" He was trembling all over, not from pain, but from the overwhelming fear that could shatter his 20-year materialist worldview. He finally understood. Those strange accidents weren't coincidences, they were all my doing. I redirected the harm in a way he couldn't possibly comprehend. "You, what on earth are you?" His voice trembled as he backed away step by step, until his back hit the cold door, with nowhere left to retreat. "I'm Jiang Wan," I said, walking toward him, each step feeling like it crushed his heart. "The Jiang Wan who loved you for 10 years, only to be cast aside like trash." I reached out and gently touched his still aching jaw. He flinched in terror, yet dared not move away. "Shinche, does it hurt?" I asked softly. "Does this feeling feel new to you?" His face was pale, cold sweat beaded on his forehead, and he couldn't utter a word. "This is just the beginning," I whispered into his ear, speaking in a voice only the two of us could hear, each word deliberate. "What you owe me, what Lin Yue owes me, I'll take it back, bit by bit. And double it." Shinche's mental defenses completely shattered. He shoved me away and stumbled out of the apartment, his backside a pitiful sight, like a dog running from home watching him flee in panic. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. "Shinche, I never thought I'd see the day you'd be afraid." Shinche didn't show up again in the following days. I guess he's probably hiding, needing time to process all of this. As for me, I began preparing for my next move, merely making Shinche fear. And crippling Lin Yue was far from enough. What I want is for them to be utterly ruined and left with nothing. I leveraged the connections and information I'd accumulated from my past life to secretly start gathering dirt on the Shin Group and the Lin family business in my past life. To inject capital into Lin Yue's family business, Shinche didn't hesitate to embezzle company funds, bleeding the Shin Group dry and ultimately leading to the Shin family's bankruptcy. In this life, I won't give him that chance again. I will send him to hell before he even makes his move. Just as I was deeply engrossed in my work, an unexpected visitor sought me out. It was Lin Yue's older brother, Lin Xiaoran. He arranged to meet me at a quiet tea house. When I arrived, he was already there. He wore a well-tailored suit and gold-rimmed glasses, appearing refined and scholarly. A stark contrast to his domineering and overbearing mother, Miss Jiang, he said, rising to pull out a chair for me. His manner, the picture of a gentleman. I sat down and got straight to the point. Mr. Lin, did you ask to see me about your sister? He nodded, his expression grave. I've heard about what happened between my sister and Lu Yan. It's bizarre. He adjusted his glasses, his gaze from behind the lenses sharp as a blade. I've looked into you, Miss Jiang. You come from an ordinary background, have a clean record, and no red flags. But ever since the art exhibition, everyone who's crossed paths with you has met with misfortune. I picked up my teacup, blew on the steam, and said nothing. I'm not here to accuse you, he said, sensing my wariness and softening his tone. I'm here to make a deal. A deal? I raised an eyebrow. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I know you're not an ordinary person. I don't care what methods you've used. I just need you to help me with something. In exchange, he paused, then dangled a massive incentive. I can help you take down Shinche together. I looked at Lin Xiaoran, surprised. He's Lin Yue's own brother. Why isn't he helping his sister seek revenge, but instead wants to team up with me against Shinche? Why? I asked. There is no why. Lin Xiaoran's gaze was icy. Shinche's engagement to my sister was nothing but a business arrangement. But now, Yue is crippled. The alliance between the Lin and Shin families has lost its purpose. What's more, he let out a cold laugh. For Yue's sake, Shinche nearly destroyed our Lin family. That's a debt I haven't forgotten. I understand now. In the previous life, Shinche exhausted all resources to find a cure for Lin Yue's legs, sparing no expense. He even embezzled funds, nearly bankrupting both the Shen and Lin corporations. Lin Xiaoran is a shrewd businessman. Profit comes first in his eyes. His sister's happiness pales in comparison to the family's interests. Chapter 8. Now that Lin Yue has become a cripple, she's nothing but a bottomless pit of a burden to the Lin family, and Shinche is the one who caused it all. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. What do you want me to help you with? I asked. Simple enough. Lin Xiaoran's eyes flashed with cold malice. I want Shinche to lose everything. His goal was the same as mine. What's in it for me? Besides helping you bring down Shinche, I can tell you a secret, Lin Xiaoran said slowly. A secret? About why you were reborn? My hand holding the teacup froze abruptly. Rebirth was my biggest secret. How could he possibly know? As if reading my mind, Lin Xiaoran smiled. Miss Jiang, this world is more complex than you imagine. Do you really think you're the only one? His words carried immense weight. I stared at him, my heart roiling with shock and turmoil. Could it be? He's one of them too. Deal. I hesitated not at all. My collaboration with Lin Xiaoran went smoothly. He used the Lin family's influence to help me gather more confidential documents from Shin Group, including tax evasion, illegal operations, and Shinche's plan to embezzle funds to establish an exorbitant rehabilitation fund for Lin Yue. The evidence was irrefutable. I anonymously reported these materials to the relevant authorities. In no time, Shin Group's stock plummeted, engulfed in a scandal and investigation. Teetering on the brink of collapse, Shinche was frantic, running around desperately, but to no avail. He probably never imagined that the ones stabbing him in the back were not only me, but also his future brother-in-law. Just as Shin Group was on the verge of collapse, I received a call from Shinche. His voice was exhausted, tinged with a hint of pleading. Jiang Wan, let's meet for a moment. I agreed. The meeting place was still that same apartment after just a few days apart. He looked 10 years older. He slumped onto the sofa, the once vibrant, brilliant prodigy now reduced to bloodshot eyes and despair. It was you, wasn't it? He looked at me, his tone calm, as if stating a fact. I didn't deny it. Why? He asked, tormented. What have I done to you? Why are you destroying me like this? I smiled. What have I done to you? I walked up to him, looking down at him from above. Shinche, do you remember that car accident 3 years ago? He froze. 3 years ago, I was hit by a truck running a red light while delivering an urgent document to him. I was unconscious in the hospital for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke up, the first person I saw wasn't him, it was Lin Yue, sitting by the bed next to mine. She'd only twisted her ankle, yet Shinche stayed by her side the whole time, peeling apples and telling jokes, and me, I lay alone in my hospital bed, barely clinging to life. He didn't even know I'd been in the accident. When he finally found out, he sent his assistant with a sum of money, never once showing his face. From that moment on, I knew this man had never had me in his heart. I recounted this past event to him calmly. Chapter 9. For the first time, Shinche's face showed confusion and guilt. I didn't know, he murmured. Yue told me back then it was just a minor cold. Does her word alone erase the fact that I nearly died? I looked at him coldly. Shinche, you're not stupid, you just don't care. Because you don't care, my life or death meant nothing to you. Because you don't care, you could push me down the stairs without a second thought, just to steady her easel. Each of my words landed like a sledgehammer, crushing his heart. He slumped powerlessly on the sofa, his face as pale as paper. Sorry. There it was again, those 3 words. It's too late to say sorry now. I looked away. The Shin family is finished. Soon, you'll be behind bars too, for embezzlement and business fraud. As for Lin Yue, she'll spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. That's what you owe me. When I finished, I turned and left. He didn't stop me. When I reached the door, his desperate, hoarse voice came from behind me. Jiang Wan, even if I deserve to die 1,000 times over, Yue is innocent. Please let her go. Okay. Even now, all he could think about was his beloved first love. You can think it over slowly once you're in prison. I pulled the door open, and sunlight poured in. Standing outside was Lin Xiaoran. He gave me a slight smile and handed me a file. Congratulations, your long-awaited revenge is finally yours. I took the file. It was the secret about rebirth he had promised to tell me. I opened it and, with just one glance, my pupils contracted sharply. Inside was an experimental report. The name of the test subject was, shockingly, Lin Yue. The contents of the report sent a chill down my spine. It described illegal experiments conducted by a secret biotech company under a project called fate grafting. In simple terms, it uses a special brainwave resonance technology to transfer one person's misfortune, illness, and harm onto another. The chosen recipient would bear all the misfortune on behalf of the subject. Lin Yue was that subject, and I was her recipient. The report meticulously documented every accident, every illness, every bit of bad luck that had happened to me over the past 10 years, from tripping on flat ground to being severely injured in a car crash. None of it was accidental. It was Lin Yue, using the destiny grafting system, transferring all the misfortune she was meant to suffer directly onto me. And Shinche was the medium who activated the system. Whenever he felt a strong desire to protect and love Lin Yue, the system would automatically activate, transferring the potential dangers around her to the person closest to him, yet the one he cared about the least, and that person is me. I finally understand why, after loving Shinche for 10 years, I always remained an insignificant shadow. It's not because I wasn't good enough, but because the system was designed to make me someone he'd ignore and look down upon. Only then, when danger struck, could he sacrifice me without hesitation to protect Lin Yue. I held the report, my hands and feet numb with cold. So my tragic past life was, from beginning to end, a meticulously planned conspiracy, and the reason for my rebirth was written on the last page of the report. Recipient Jiang Wan, due to prolonged exposure to excessive misfortune transfer, suffered mental energy collapse, causing a bug in the fate grafting system, resulting in the consciousness regression phenomenon, rebirth, and the harm transfer system I awakened. It's actually a byproduct of that bug. It no longer forces me to bear harm unilaterally, it gives me the power to fight back. This company was invested in by the Lin family. Lin Xiaoran's voice echoed beside me, cold and devoid of emotion. This experiment was a gift my father specially prepared for his precious daughter, to ensure she'd live a smooth and safe life forever. So, my sister isn't some innocent white moonlight. From the very beginning, she knew you existed. She comfortably enjoyed everything you endured for her, watched you suffer, watched you fail, and even watched you die. Lin Xiaoran pushed his glasses up, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his eyes. Now that she's crippled, it's only what she deserves. I clenched the report in my hand, my knuckles turning white. A wave of overwhelming hatred surged from deep within my heart. So that's how it is. The deep affection I thought I'd given was nothing but a complete and utter deception. My entire life, from the start, had been Lin Yue's stepping stone and trash can. What about Shinche? Does he know? I asked, my voice hoarse. He doesn't know, Lin Xiaoran said. He's just a pitiful pawn, like you. But that's no excuse for him to hurt you. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, nothing remained in my gaze but a cold, lifeless void. Lin Xiaoran, our deal isn't finished. Chapter 10. Oh, he looked at me with keen interest. I want the Lin family wiped from the face of the earth. Lin Xiaoran looked at me, fell silent for a moment, then began to laugh. Jiang Wan, you're even more ruthless than I imagined. Takes one to know one, I retorted coldly. He betrayed his own father and sister to seize control of the Lin family. How is he any better than me? Fine, he agreed immediately. I can help you, but I have one condition. Speak. After this is done, I want you to lift the curse from Yue. He looked at me, his eyes sincere. She may deserve punishment, but she's still my sister. Having her legs crippled is already the harshest penalty she should receive. I looked at him and suddenly found myself amused. Did he really think my power was something I could turn on and off at will? Still, that didn't stop me from exploiting his belief. Alright, I nodded. With my promise secured, Lin Xiaoran's drive was astonishing. Using his insider knowledge of the Lin family, combined with the fate grafting experiment report I had, he delivered a fatal blow to the Lin family. Conducting illegal human experimentation was a capital offense, one that could bring the entire Lin family to utter ruin. The Lin patriarch was arrested and imprisoned, the Lin group was seized, and all its assets were frozen. The once illustrious Lin family collapsed overnight, crumbling into nothing. Shen-Che, meanwhile, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for a multitude of combined charges. It was in the courtroom that I saw him for the last time, dressed in prison garb, his hair shaved to a buzz cut. He was gaunt and hollowed out. Not a trace of his former aristocratic bearing remained. His gaze cut through the crowd and settled on me. There was no hatred in that look, nor love, only a dead, hollow emptiness. He had probably learned the whole truth from Lin Xiaoran by then. He knew then that a decade of his deepest devotion had merely been spent weaving a wedding gown for someone else, knowing that I had personally put the person I loved most on a pedestal, only to push an innocent person into hell. This punishment was worse than death. I no longer felt anything for him. Once everything had settled, I went to the rehabilitation center where Lin Yue was staying. With the Lin family brought down, that pampered heiress naturally could no longer afford an expensive private hospital. This rehabilitation center was in a remote area, and the conditions were terrible. When I found her, she was sitting in a wheelchair, staring blankly in a small garden. She had lost a lot of weight, her face was sallow, and her eyes were vacant. The once untouchable moonlight in everyone's heart now looked more down and out than a beggar on the street. Only when she saw me did a ripple finally appear in her dull eyes. It was hatred. It's you, she ground out through clenched teeth, her voice a strangled rasp. Jiang Wan, you monster, I'm merely returning everything you inflicted upon me, I said calmly, watching her. How does it feel, to be treated like trash, to bear another's misfortune? Is it pleasant? You're lying, she cried, flailing her arms wildly. I don't know anything about fate transference. I know nothing, really. I took out my phone and tapped on a recording. It was a conversation between her and her father, given to me by Lin Xiaoran. On the recording, her voice was sickeningly sweet as she whined to her father, Daddy, that Jiang Wan seems to be doing well lately. Is the system malfunctioning? You need to make Shen-Che love me more, so all my bad luck gets transferred to her. As the recording ended, the color drained completely from Lin Yue's face. She slumped in her wheelchair, trembling like a leaf. I put away my phone and looked down at her. Now, what else do you have to say? Lin Yue completely broke down in front of me. She sobbed uncontrollably, completely losing her composure. Chapter 11. I was wrong, Jiang Wan, I really was wrong. She grabbed my pants, pleading desperately. Please let me go, I beg you. I don't want to live like this forever. I disgustedly kicked her hand away. Let me go. You treated me like a vessel for 10 years of misfortune, car accidents, serious illness, betrayal from everyone. When I was on the brink of death, why didn't you think of letting me go? Now, begging for mercy, it's too late. I looked at her desperate face, but felt no satisfaction in revenge, only profound absurdity and exhaustion. I turned and walked away, not looking back at her once. Behind me, her cries and curses grew increasingly shrill and desperate. Even after dealing with all my enemies, I felt no sense of relief. I sold the apartment Shen-Che had given me and refused the enormous payment Lin Xiaoran offered. All I wanted was to leave this city and start a new life. Before I left, Lin Xiaoran found me. He honored our agreement, handing over to me the few remaining viable assets and connections of the Lin family. What are your plans now? He asked me. To go somewhere no one knows me, I said. He was silent for a moment, then said, Yue, she's lost her mind. My steps faltered, but I didn't look back. She was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Keep saying ghosts are out to get her, that someone's trying to steal her luck. She got what she deserved. I know, Lin Xiaoran sighed. Jiang that ability of yours, is it still there? I shook my head. It was strange. Ever since Lin Yue was declared mentally unsound, that damage transfer system in my mind had fallen completely silent. It seemed to have vanished. Perhaps, once all the grudges were settled, it had simply fulfilled its purpose. That's for the best, Lin Xiaoran nodded. From now on, just live as an ordinary person, live well. Without a word, I pulled my suitcase and walked into the airport security checkpoint. As the plane took off, I watched the city below shrink smaller and smaller, a mix of emotions surging through me. Everything from the past felt like a bizarre, nightmarish dream now. The dream was over. Leaning against the window, I looked at the pure blue sky and white clouds outside, and slowly closed my eyes. Jiang Wan's life had come to an end and my life was only just beginning. The end. That's all for the first story. Don't go away, the next one is even more exciting. My mother-in-law pretended to have dementia just so she could make me come home and take care of her. She smashed my cosmetics, cut up my work clothes, and even secretly swapped out the gifts I had prepared for my client. I was fired from my job for offending a client, so I had to return home to take care of her. By accident, I discovered she had slipped something into my water cup. I pretended to faint and secretly followed her to the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department. I caught my husband accompanying his mistress as she gave birth. My mother-in-law pretended to have dementia, just to keep me trapped at home while my husband and his mistress enjoyed their little life together outside. Furious, I confronted them, screaming at the mother and child in the stairwell. My mother-in-law feigned comfort, then pushed me down the escalator. Pain shot straight to my brain, and under their malicious stares, I closed my eyes in despair. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my mother-in-law was first diagnosed with dementia. Honey, my mom's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Can you quit your job and stay home to take care of her? At the sound, my scattered thoughts slowly came back to me, and I shifted my gaze to the face in front of me. My husband, Xing Tang, was looking at me with anticipation written all over his face. I felt dazed. Hadn't mother-in-law pushed me down the stairs right? My husband had cheated on me and had a son with his mistress. Mother-in-law had secretly gone to the hospital to see her grandson, and I caught her later, in the middle of our argument. Mother-in-law actually pushed me down the hospital escalator, and I blacked out on the spot. Could it be that I had been reborn? I looked down at myself and saw that I was still wearing the work dress mother-in-law had slashed. Strangely, the dress was completely intact. Could it really be that I had been reborn? I glanced up at the digital calendar. It was the exact day my past life mother-in-law had been diagnosed. I really have been reborn. The surge of joy in my heart was abruptly cut short by my husband. My husband noticed the shifting expression on my face and saw that I was hesitating to respond. He grew impatient and snapped, "What's wrong with you? I'm talking to you. Can you even hear me?" Staring at that repulsive face, I suppressed the rising wave of hatred in my chest and pretended I hadn't heard clearly. "Honey, what did you say?" My husband repeated himself, trying to remain patient. "Our mom's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I can't leave her alone at home. Can you quit your job and take care of her?" I pointed at myself in surprise. "You want me to quit, but I earn more than you. If I leave my job, can you really support the family responsibilities? I'm the one covering all the household expenses right now. Could your salary even support a family of 4? My salary is double my husband's, which is a sore spot for him. I never brought it up before to spare his pride, but now I have no reason to feel sorry for that worthless man." My husband flew into a rage. "If you don't want to, just say so. Why all the passive-aggressive remarks?" I replied calmly, "I'm not being passive-aggressive. If you're worried about your mom, we could simply hire a nanny. There's no need for you to quit your job, right?" My husband raised his voice. "Nannies are so expensive. Who's going to pay for that? The kids are young. Our expenses are high. Why can't you just cut me some slack?" I blinked, keeping my composure. "My salary is high enough to cover our household expenses. Yours is lower, barely enough for a nanny. Anyway, your company is. You don't stand a chance with this adjustment anyway. Might as well quit and go home to take care of mom. It'll save us the money we'd spend on a nanny, and you can still look after the kids. What do you think?" His face turned bright red, knowing he had no valid argument. He stormed out of the bedroom angrily. I collapsed onto the bed and let out a heavy sigh. In my past life, my husband also demanded I quit my job to care for his mother. After I refused, he gave me the silent treatment for a whole month, until I got fired. He finally softened a bit. My attitude improved a little. I knew he'd gone to consult with his mother to come up with a plan. Soon after, she'd pretend to have a medical episode, smash all my cosmetics, and even cut up the work uniform the company required us to wear every day. Ruined. I didn't wear the uniform to work and got scolded by my boss. resulting in a performance penalty later. A client handed over to me by my boss was offended because my mother-in-law swapped out the contents of the gift bag. The company lost a major client and decided to fire me. That's how I ended up back at home, taking care of my drama-loving mother-in-law. I sneaked up to my mother-in-law's bedroom door and heard her confident voice from inside. "Don't worry, I have a way to make her quit. I worked so hard to raise you, and now that you're successful, I can finally enjoy being waited on hand and foot, a life of leisure." My husband still seemed uneasy. "Mom, you have to act convincingly in your daily life. Don't give the game away. If there's an emergency, just slip something into her water to make her run to the bathroom a few extra times. Don't you know your own mother's acting skills? Have you forgotten how we got those 2 girls sent off to boarding school?" My husband let out a few suppressed chuckles. "I know, you deliberately gave the kids medicine to make them have diarrhea, and intentionally forgot to pick them up and drop them off. Within just 1 month, she voluntarily sent the children to boarding school. Perfect. Now we can use her supposed dementia as an excuse, and she won't suspect a thing." My mind went completely blank. A year ago, my husband and I brought his mother to the city, hoping she'd help with picking up and dropping off our twin daughters, who had just started elementary school. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law when my husband was in middle school, raising him alone in a small village. After my husband and I got married, she stayed alone in the countryside and rarely came to the provincial city. Even when I gave birth and was recovering, it was my parents who rushed over to help, covering expenses and taking care of both me and the baby. My mother-in-law made excuses about motion sickness and couldn't come, then stopped answering her phone altogether. Both I and my husband knew full well she wasn't unable to come, she simply didn't want to. She's deeply biased towards sons over daughters. Life was full of bumps and stumbles. It wasn't until our daughter was about to start primary school that my parents, needing to care for my sister who was expecting her second child, moved back to their hometown. That's why we thought of my mother-in-law, who lived alone in the countryside. After she came to stay with us for 2 months, our child would get diarrhea every time she ate the food my mother-in-law cooked. Though my husband and I were fine, I was busy with work and didn't think much of it. I immediately stocked up on snacks at home so my child could wait until I got off work to have a proper meal. But the good times didn't last. My mother-in-law then forgot to pick up and drop off our child for an entire week straight. In the mornings, I kept getting calls from the teacher complaining about our child being late. In the evenings, when I came home from overtime work, she would only then remember she hadn't gone to the after-school center to pick our child up. When I called to remind her, she either wouldn't answer the phone, or she'd promise to go but then forget again a moment later. My husband was often away on business trips and simply couldn't manage things at home. My job requires frequent overtime, and picking up and dropping off my child has become my biggest challenge. Out of desperation, I had no choice but to send my child to school to live on campus. I still remember the day my child moved into the school dorm, how the 3 of us, mother and daughters, hugged and cried together. Their mocking expressions back then, I still remember them vividly to this day. So it was all an act they performed together, mother and son. Those were their own granddaughter and daughter, and they actually gave them laxatives. The girls were only 9 years old. Those 2 despicable creatures, they're worse than pigs and dogs. I clenched my fists and silently vowed to get back every bit of pain and suffering my daughter and I have endured from them. I quickly locked my cosmetics and toiletries in the cabinet, then packed away my work uniforms and valuable clothes from the wardrobe. I planned to put it in the company's break room. Looking at my empty closet, I felt it wasn't safe enough, so I decisively hung Xiang Xingtong's suit, the one he usually wore to meetings, in my own closet. After doing that, I hired a professional detective to investigate Xiang Xingtong and his mistress. A few days later, when I got home from work, Xiang Xingtong stormed toward me, holding up a piece of clothing. "What happened to my clothes? Do you know I had a campaign speech today? Because of this outfit, I've lost all my dignity." I glanced at him, then looked at the suit jacket in his hand. There was a big hole cut right in the middle of the back. I said with a smug smile, "Your clothes are always washed and put away by our mom. Go ask her." He glared at me resentfully, then headed to his mother-in-law's room. As he turned away, I noticed a large tear in the back of his pants, revealing his colorful underwear. Every time he moved, I couldn't help bursting out laughing. Xingtong's face darkened even more. He shouted at his mother, "Mom, how could my clothes suddenly end up with 2 holes in them for no reason?" Looking at the familiar clothes in his hands, then at me, his mother's expression kept changing as she hesitated to speak. I leaned against the doorway to Grandma's room, smirking as I poured oil on the fire. "Mom, Xingtong is competing for a leadership position at work right now. Why weren't you more careful when doing his laundry today?" Not only did he lose face in front of his coworkers and superiors, but he could very well be eliminated from the evaluation list. The promotion he's waited so many years for could be ruined. Her face went a little pale. She said to her son in a flustered panic. Mom didn't know these were your clothes. I thought they were. My grandmother, mindful of my presence, didn't finish the sentence. She said with frustration, oh dear, I meant well but messed things up. I didn't do it on purpose. Here, let me give you some money to go buy a new outfit. Xiang Xingtang was furious and wouldn't let it go. The humiliation is already done. What's the point of buying a new set now? The mother-in-law, despite being in the wrong, refused to back down. You can't put all the blame on me. You should have checked it before you wore it, Xiang Xingtang shouted. My suit was perfectly fine the last time I wore it. Tell me, how on earth did you manage to ruin it in the wash? The mother-in-law shrank back and fell silent. I quickly stepped in to defend her considerately. She meant well, and she's not well herself, is she? It's just a suit. If you don't get the promotion this time, there'll be another chance. Please, just don't be angry with her anymore. Xiang Xingtang threw the suit on the floor, stomped on it several times, and then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Since my mother-in-law arrived, Xiang Xingtang has always obeyed her every word and been exceptionally filial. This was the first time he had ever lost his temper with her so fiercely. My mother-in-law watched her son's back with a pained expression, her eyes sweeping over me with a flash of venom before quickly vanishing. I felt a sense of satisfaction inside, though I comforted her with words. Mom, Xingtang is just upset right now. He'll be back in a moment. Don't worry. My mother-in-law gave me a cold glance, then turned and retreated into her own room. I narrowed my eyes at her retreating back. I wouldn't let her off so easily. I fiddled in the kitchen for a while, then brought out a bowl of thick, greenish liquid and delivered it to my mother-in-law's room. Mom, it's time for your medicine. My mother-in-law was still upset about what had just happened. She snapped angrily, what medicine? Let me die and be done with it. I won't take it. Then, as if remembering something, she started to cry. I'm old and useless now. Everything I do is wrong. I've caught this illness, and I can't do anything. Even my daughter-in-law won't stay home to look after me, and my own son looks down on me. I'd be better off dead. The corner of my mouth twitched. Her own son despises her, and she's still putting on an act for his sake. I held the phone's video call up to my mother-in-law and said, Auntie, please talk some sense into Mom. She refuses to take it. Hearing me, my mother-in-law turned her head suspiciously and saw my aunt from the countryside on the video call on my phone. Why are you on a video call with your aunt? I explained, you're sick, and Auntie was very worried. She specifically found a folk remedy from the countryside and asked me to brew the medicine for you. On the screen, my aunt earnestly pleaded with my mother-in-law, don't be afraid, you're a long way from dying. Just take the medicine according to my prescription. I guarantee you, may you live 100 years. My mother-in-law was so angry she slapped me. You wretched girl, why did you have to tell your aunt? My mother-in-law's elder sister, Xiang Xingtang's aunt, was a famous barefoot doctor in all the villages for miles around. She enjoyed researching folk remedies for various illnesses, testing them on people around her. A few years ago, my mother-in-law had her bring me a folk prescription for having a son, which I secretly threw away. She even called herself a miracle doctor and often put up advertisements on the village's utility poles. My mother-in-law knew her own sister's true capabilities, but she didn't dare to openly defy her. This time, I deliberately called her to ask for a folk remedy to treat dementia since she was concerned about her sister's health. I made a video call specifically so she could watch my mother-in-law take the medicine. I rubbed my stinging hand and said, Auntie cares about you a lot and even said she'd come to visit. My mother-in-law glanced at the dark green herbal soup I brought over, then waved her hand at me in disgust. Get that out of here. What is this stuff? I'm not drinking it. Auntie, on the video call, snapped sternly, Show your own, you dare. Taking advantage of the distance between her and Auntie, my mother-in-law boldly said, none of the medicine you prepared works, might as well be poison. I'm not drinking anything you mix up. Auntie got angry and threatened her, either you drink it right now, or I'll have my niece book a ticket. I'll come over and watch you drink it. Terrified she might actually come, my mother-in-law reluctantly picked up the bowl and downed it in one gulp, right in front of the camera. But as soon as she put the bowl down, she rushed to the bathroom and threw up. Hearing her retching sounds gave me a small sense of satisfaction. I was just adding some potent tonics like Renshenghuang to the herbal medicine to nourish my mother-in-law's health. Ever since her diagnosis, my mother-in-law stopped cooking dinner for me and her son at home. She waits for me to come home from work to cook every single day. As for Xiang Xingtang, he comes home very late. No need to ask. It's obvious he's cozying up at his mistress's place. I was afraid my mother-in-law would slip laxatives into my water and affect my work. I made sure to eat my fill outside every day before heading Once home, I'd use the late hour as an excuse and just boil her some plain noodles and water. After a few days of that, she couldn't take it anymore and complained to the neighbors about my mistreatment. Oh, I haven't forgotten about her condition. Every day after work, when I run into the elderly neighbors in the community, I complain with a worried expression about my mother-in-law's illness. I tell them her dementia is getting worse. She insists she ate plain noodles for dinner last night, even though she actually ate something else. After hearing this, the neighbors nod and say she's told them the same thing. Later, my mother-in-law realized that when she complained to neighbors again, they no longer angrily blamed me, they simply ignored her. With no one to vent to, she had to go to other neighborhoods and complain to strangers. She's spreading lies about me everywhere, and I can't just let her keep doing it. I made an excuse that it's too dangerous for her to go out alone. She might forget the way home during an episode, and secretly brought my aunt from the countryside to take care of her. I told my aunt, "My mom always says she's not sick, don't believe her, she'll tell you she's deliberately conspiring with my husband to trick me, and she'll say he's having an affair. None of it is true, don't argue with her, if you push her too hard, I'm afraid her condition will worsen." My aunt nodded knowingly. "I know, there's an old man in our village with the same illness, I think. The medicine can't be stopped, it has to be taken continuously to be effective. Now that I'm here, I'll make sure she takes it every day." I couldn't have been happier if she gave my mother-in-law more of that herbal medicine, and I eagerly agreed with her. From then on, our home was in constant chaos. My mother-in-law and my aunt argued every day, neither willing to back down. Xiang Xingtang came home from work every day, utterly fed up, and finally decided to send both my aunt and my mother-in-law back to their hometown. Of course, even then, they never let their secret slip. In front of me, the detective sent me information about Xiang Xingtang's mistress, Zhong Lixia. Xiang Xingtang had actually cheated on me a year ago, he started traveling frequently. I thought it was because of a job transfer. I never expected it was all to go on a trip with his mistress. Looking at the familiar face of the mistress in the photo, I had a hunch I had seen her somewhere before. It wasn't until a meeting at the company, when my rival Zhong Liqing kept glancing my way, that I realized he looked a lot like the mistress, and even their names were similar. A bold guess immediately sprang to mind. He and Zhong Lixia are siblings. The two of us are currently competing for the deputy director position at the company. If I get fired now, the deputy director spot will definitely go to Zhong Liqing. What a well-planned scheme. In my previous life, the expensive private wine I gave to a client was swapped by my mother-in-law for the flavored dessert the client hated most, and Zhong Liqing was definitely behind it too. A masterpiece from the Empress Dowager. Xiang Xingtang actually used my work to curry favor with his mistress's family. "You've been leeching off me for so long, let's see if you can keep it up in this lifetime." While Xiang Xingtang was away taking his aunt and mother-in-law back to their hometown, I went to his company to see his boss. I suspected Xiang Xingtang's salary wasn't high enough to afford a mistress, unless he had been hiding his real income from me. At first, the receptionist said I didn't have an appointment and wouldn't let me in. I told her I needed to report a serious case of company property embezzlement directly to the leadership. The receptionist had no choice but to call the company's person in charge. To my surprise, I saw Zhong Lixia sitting in the boss's chair inside the office, dressed in a sharp suit. She raised an eyebrow at me and said, "Ms. Feng, who exactly are you here to report for embezzlement?" I had no idea she was a manager at Xiang Company. The investigation materials didn't mention that. The moment I recognized her, I was nearly thrown into a panic. I wasn't prepared to meet the other woman. Her sudden appearance caught me completely off guard. I had no idea how I should act towards her. I quickly made up an excuse on the spot. I wanted to check Xiang Xingtang's pay stub. The amount deposited into his bank account is wrong. It used to be 5,320 every month, but now it's only 4,320. Did your company make a mistake with his salary? Zhong Lixia frowned and said, "Company policy prohibits us from showing salary records to non-employees. If there's nothing else, Miss Feng, please leave." This was her company. Coming here unprepared was incredibly rash. Staying deadlocked here with her won't get me what I want. I'd better think of another way. Without saying another word, I turned and was about to leave. "Miss Feng, do you know something?" I froze mid-step, then turned back at once, locking my gaze on her eyes. "If it comes to a showdown, I'm not afraid. As a company leader, she has the nerve to get involved with a married man, so she surely wouldn't care about what her own employees would say behind her back." She looked as if she had known all along and let out a soft laugh. "Miss Feng, you really have a short fuse." I stopped pretending to and gave a light laugh. "I want to know why." "What do you mean, why? Why would you be interested in someone like Xiang Xingtang?" "Because I wanted to see what it's like to be a little woman. I think you deserve better, given your social standing." "No, I prefer ordinary men who are easy to control. He's married, I know, I like the thrill. I was speechless. After a moment of silence, I gave her my assessment. There really aren't many women in this world who become the other woman for reasons other than money. You really are disgustingly cheap. She wasn't angry after hearing that. Instead, she kept that distant, frosty expression on her face. You know he cheated, and you still won't pack your things and get a divorce. You come here to pick a fight with me. What? Are you expecting me to hand that trash back to you? Aren't you pretty pathetic yourself? Looking back at what I was doing now, in her eyes I must have seemed like someone desperate to save her marriage. I couldn't help letting out a self-mocking laugh. Seeing me laugh, she started laughing too. I said through clenched teeth, I hate him to death. There's no way I'd ever take him back. Funny, so do I, she said, looking at my face. I looked at her in surprise. What's going on? Why was everything different after coming back to life? Wasn't she already pregnant with Xiang Xingtang's child by now? Zhong Lisha's voice carried a trace of sadness. I misjudged people and let the wolf into the house. To be honest, I had a dream some time ago. In it, I was pregnant. I asked Xiang Xingtang to divorce you and marry me, and that bastard kept coming up with excuses to drag out the divorce, using my pregnancy and the need for rest as an excuse. He kept me locked up at home while he handled the company's affairs for me at the office. Her expression remained calm. On the day I gave birth, I discovered he was secretly trying to sell off the assets under my name. I got so worked up that I was threatened with a miscarriage. Xiang Xingtang kept stalling and refused to take me to the hospital. And he took away my phone. It was only because my colleagues at the company couldn't stand it that I secretly called 120. And they took me to the hospital. I had massive bleeding and didn't make it off the operating table alive. Before I died, I kept thinking that heaven must be punishing me for getting involved in someone else's marriage, cutting my life short and leaving my child to be born only to suffer the loss of a mother. Then when I woke up again, I found myself back on the day I first discovered I was pregnant. Was she also killed by Xiang Xingtang? And then Reborn, the two of us actually came back together. I'm sorry, in my dream, I caused you to lose your job. She gave an apologetic smile. I wanted to cut things off with him right away, but I wanted revenge. So you, she looked at me and didn't go on. My lips trembled as I wanted to tell her about the similar ordeal I had gone through, but after a moment's thought, I forced myself to swallow the words back down. It's not the right time yet. With you around, Xiang Xingtang will never be short of money, so why would he sell off assets under your name? I voiced the doubt in my mind. Zhong Lisha said. I was puzzled too. He had no money worries at all and nothing to spend it on. It wasn't until a few days ago that I found out he was gambling online and the stakes were huge. I know exactly what he earns, and ever since I had that dream, I haven't given him a single cent. Where this money came from, I have no idea. I immediately felt a warning bell go off in my head. Xiang Xingtang's salary was low, and he hadn't managed to save much over the years. If the money didn't come from robbery, there was only one other possibility. As soon as I left the house, I went to the bank. The staff politely told me that the house we're currently living in has already been mortgaged a second time last month. Xiang Xingtang came to the bank and took out $1 million loan using the house. This house was purchased when we got married in the provincial capital years ago, with my parents and my late father-in-law pooling resources from the entire family to raise the 600,000 yuan down payment. At the time, I was pregnant, and for convenience in handling the paperwork, only Xiang Xingtang's name was put on the deed. Later, we paid the mortgage together, and we were just 2 years away from paying it off. But ever since my mother-in-law moved in a year ago, she's been frequently making excuses about headaches and fevers, needing Xiang Xingtang to take her to the hospital. Xiang Xingtang naturally shifted the responsibility of mortgage payments onto me, and now he's secretly using the house to gamble. He doesn't care at all about what will happen to my daughter and me in the future, or about what will become of his own aging mother. My feelings toward him are no longer just simple hatred. I'd almost wish he were dead. I walked numbly and mechanically along the roadside, unable to stop thinking back to when we first met. Both my partner and I, Xiang Xingtang, were college students who came from rural areas. As a migrant worker in Beijing, I met Xiang Xingtang, who was also living and working in the city. I admired his thoughtfulness and care. He appreciated my intelligence and independence. We clicked instantly and returned together to the provincial capital of our hometown to build our lives. After our child started kindergarten, I quit my stable, fixed-salary job, citing the heavy financial burden on our family, and took on a new position. As a sales manager, I often had to work overtime to meet project deadlines. Meanwhile, Xiang Xingtang remained in his job, unremarkable and stagnant. Though his salary wasn't as high as mine, he could always be there for the family, which brought a sense of stability. About a year ago, his job started requiring frequent business trips to take care of the child. I had no choice but to go along with him and agree to bring his mother from the countryside. I never expected that he wasn't on a business trip at all. He was cheating. I worked myself to the bone with overtime every month, and later even sent the kids to live at school, enduring the agony of being separated from my own flesh and blood, all to pay off the mortgage as quickly as possible. But not only was he cheating, he'd also gotten into gambling, and now we were even about to lose the house. All those years of hardship, the future of my 2 daughters, everything was ruined by his hands. Now I have nothing left in this life. I haven't even had the chance to get my revenge, and now I'm about to lose the one place I can call home. What am I supposed to do? I went to find Zhong Lixia again. I needed to get proof of his affair as fast as possible so I could divorce him and safeguard the marital assets that belonged to me. I needed her help. I told her the truth. You probably don't know this, but in my previous life, I was pushed down the stairs and killed at the hospital where you were giving birth. It was the same day you gave birth. She looked up at me in surprise. I gave her a bitter smile. The room fell silent for a long moment before she reached out and took my hand. Her fingertips were icy cold, but her words were warm. I'll help you. I squeezed her hand back hard and gave her a grateful smile. Zhong Lixia introduced a lawyer to me, who helped me apply for pre-litigation property preservation and freeze all the bank cards under his name. According to the lawyer, Xiang Hingtong still had 430,000 yuan in his account. He probably just hadn't had time to gamble it all away yet. Xiang Hingtong called me right away after he found out. Feng Hui, what do you mean by this? He asked me angrily over the phone. I want a divorce, I said flatly. Why? Tell me the reason. His tone was sharp. You cheated, and your mistress is even pregnant. You think you hid it that well? I taunted him. He said in shock. You, who did you hear that from? Was it my mom? She has dementia. She's talking nonsense. Stop pretending. Your mom and you have both been acting to deceive me. Do you think I'm stupid enough not to see through it? The mistress has already sent me the photos. How about the 3 of us meet face to face and settle this? He fell silent on the other end. I sent him each of the photos Zhong Lixia had sent me. Come on. Do you want to go to court or settle for a divorce agreement? I continued to ask him. He frowned, confused. Feng Hui, why do you insist on divorce? Even if I cheated, I didn't take time away from you and the kids, and I didn't spend money on another woman. Can't you just turn a blind eye? Can't I just turn a blind eye? Xiang Xingtong, you didn't take time away from me and the kids. You were basically on dates with your mistress during work hours, and you didn't spend money on her either, because you spent it all on gambling. Right, I finished for him. You're right, he snapped angrily. Divorce, fine, get divorced, but don't expect to get anything from me. I won't ask for a single extra cent. I'm entitled to half the house. I want it cashed out. Both daughters stay with me, and I won't take any child support from you. Each party is responsible for their own debts. That's my condition. I don't have the money. There's no way I can give you half the property value in cash. Don't you dare dream about it, he said scornfully. Fine, see you in court. Then, I hung up the phone immediately. Now it was up to Zhong Lixia. Zhong Lixia did not disappoint. She dangled her own company as bait for Xiang Xingtong, promising to hand over its management to him once they were married. Xiang Xingtong came to me right away to file for divorce at the Civil Affairs Bureau. There was a mandatory 1-month cooling-off period. Xiang Xingtong said he would give me half the property value on the day we got the certificate, but demanded I unfreeze his bank accounts immediately. I didn't trust him, afraid I might not even get the 400,000 in the end. I refused. He looked at me with contempt, and as he left, he spat out, "You're so narrow-minded. This is as far as you'll ever get. Just wait and see what happens when I make it big. Don't regret it when I'm successful, and don't come crawling back to me crying." I smiled and said, "I'm just an ordinary person. I don't chase daydreams. If you ever become a big boss, just don't forget your 2 daughters." This past month, I found a house, moved, and enrolled the kids in school. It was tiring, but I was happy. The day to receive the certificate arrived quickly. Zhong Lixia said Xiang Xingtong had asked her for a loan, but she claimed her company needed funds for operations and had no extra money. Not only did she refuse to lend him money, but she immediately introduced him to a manager from a loan shark company. Xiang Xingtong was cautious. He never touched online loans even when he was addicted to gambling. He knew online loans were off limits, but when it came to someone introduced by Zhong Lixia, he was willing to trust them a little more. After all, she was a fairly big shot in business. With Zhong Lixia there, he felt like someone had his back, and that gave him more confidence. Xiang Hantang took a lump sum of 500,000 yuan from the loan shark's manager and signed a contract with the loan company agreeing to repay it in 3 months. The pre-litigation preservation order lasted 1 month. If no divorce lawsuit was filed in court by then, it would automatically expire and his bank card would be unfrozen. Of that, he also transferred all 400,000 yuan to me. At current housing prices, I ended up with 900,000 yuan and happily got my divorce certificate. Xiang Hantang said nothing and left first by car after we got the certificate. Finally out of that den of wolves, I called Zhong Lixia to share the good news. What came next was her stage. Zhong Liqing has resigned from our company. I was completely taken aback when I found out. Ever since I joined this company 5 years ago, Zhong Liqing and I have been at each other's throats. We were constantly competing for clients to boost our performance, which made us bitter rivals. My income has grown from a monthly 8,000 to an annual salary of over 200,000. And I credit half of that success to the fierce competition between Zhong Liqing and me. When he decided to leave the company, I even felt a strange sense of mutual respect. Not long after, I was promoted to deputy director, a promotion, a pay raise, and ditching my husband, I managed to hit the trifecta of life's great fortunes all at once. Around that time, news also came from Zhong Lixia's side. My ex-mother-in-law, who pretends to have dementia, has come running back from the countryside again to take care of the pregnant Zhong Lixia. She brought chicken soup, duck soup, and seafood soup to her company 3 times a day. One served her diligently, the other showered her with sweet words, constantly coaxing Zhong Lixia to hand over the company to Xiang Xingtong to manage. Zhong Lixia would suddenly want fruit, then suddenly want snacks, keeping her ex-mother-in-law running around like a headless chicken. As for Xiang Xingtong, Zhong Lixia deliberately let him access some confidential company documents and brought him to meet the influential figures she knew. She introduced him to them personally. Xiang Xingtong gradually started to get carried away. He began bossing everyone around in Zhong Lixia's company, acting as if he were the real owner. Then one day, a colleague from the company came to my office and told me there was an old woman downstairs arguing with the security guard, yelling at me while trying to force her way in. When I went out to check, I saw the crowd surrounding none other than my ex-mother-in-law. I went out to check, and there, surrounded by a crowd, was my ex-mother-in-law. I was wondering why she wasn't busy attending to Zhong Lixia and had come looking for me instead. She spotted me, pointed her finger right at me, and started yelling, "You've got some nerve, Feng Hui. All these years you only managed to pop out 2 worthless girls, and now you dare to demand 900,000 from your husband in the divorce. Why don't you just go rob a bank? You give that money back right now. That's our family's money. What right do you have to take it?" It dawned on me that the loan sharks must have already shown up at Xiang Xingtong's door demanding their money. Ever since Zhong Lixia got pregnant, she hadn't given Xiang Xingtong a single cent. My ex-mother-in-law must have heard that Xiang Xingtong took out a loan to pay for our divorce, and she stormed over to me in a rage, deluded into thinking she could make me cough up the cash. The colleagues gathered around to watch the spectacle began whispering among themselves, "So Feng Hui got divorced. No wonder she's been in such great spirits lately. She just got promoted to director. Getting divorced really clears your head. Did you only come to demand money after finding out she got promoted?" My ex-mother-in-law, upon hearing I got promoted, seemed to have found a weakness. "Have you been cheating for a long time? Did you sleep with your company's boss? You used our family's money to buy your job. How shameless are you? Your conscience must have been eaten by a dog." I had someone call the police, then calmly walked up to her and said, "Auntie, are you having another episode? My ex-husband cheated on me. I divorced him, and the money he paid me was the cash value of the house. That was our marital property. Why shouldn't I get it? We divorced by mutual agreement, and he signed it willingly. You can't just make false accusations." My ex-mother-in-law screamed, "Pfft, you're as scheming as a honeycomb coal block. No wonder my son never liked you. For years I urged you to have a son, but you pretended not to hear. You refused to have one, so my son found someone else to have children with, and now you dare to demand a share of his money. You're nothing but a money-grubbing creature. Oh my, why is my son so unlucky? Stuck with a vicious woman like you. You cheated and still want to swallow up our family's assets. Does justice not exist in this world?" She plopped down again and began crying and yelling, clapping her hands. The co-workers started whispering again, "This old woman is really being unreasonable. She doesn't even know most of the leaders in our company are women. Director Feng's ex-mother-in-law is so vicious. What kind of life was she living before? It's better to be divorced." With a mother-in-law like that, a divorce was only a matter of time. Hearing that, the old woman's face flushed red. Without bothering to figure out what was going on, she pointed at my co-workers and cursed, "You shameless hussies all side with her and defend her. You're definitely just like her, running around with men and acting loose. Pa, no shame at all. Several young women turned red with anger and argued back with her. At that moment, the police arrived. I pointed at my ex-mother-in-law and said she came to cause trouble. Seeing the police officer in uniform, my mother-in-law felt guilty, a flicker of panic crossing her face, but quickly pretended to be confused and clueless. "Oh my, where am I? This isn't my home, officer. I was just trying to go home. How did I end up here?" I let out a laugh. "Auntie, stop pretending. I've already divorced Xiang Xingtong. Why are you pretending to be senile in front of me? You came here for money, didn't you? I have surveillance footage." "Exactly. We can all testify." She was perfectly clear-headed when she was yelling earlier. My ex-mother-in-law's face twisted in rage. I pulled up the medical diagnosis on my phone and explained to the police officer, who didn't understand the situation. "My ex-mother-in-law previously tried to get me to quit my job. She went home to take care of her, and even conspired with her son to forge a fake medical diagnosis, pretending to have dementia to trick me. Now she's trying to pull the same old stunt again. Society has moved on, but she's still stuck in the Qing dynasty." My colleagues didn't hold back their sarcastic remarks. My ex-mother-in-law's face turned pale, but she said nothing. The police officer took her to the station for a talking to and had her call Xiang Xingtong. Unexpectedly, another police officer answered the phone. It turned out Zhong Lixia was adamant that she had no money left and refused to give him another cent. Driven into a corner by loan sharks, Xiang Xingtong finally targeted the confidential materials at Zhong Lixia's company. He sold the company's trade secrets to a rival firm, was caught red-handed by Zhong Lixia's brother, Zhong Liqing, and is now being held at the police station. Upon hearing the full story, my ex-mother-in-law immediately broke down in tears right there at the station. She suddenly dropped to her knees before me. "Feng Hui, please, I'm begging you, give the money back to the loan sharks. If you hadn't taken that money, he never would have done something like this. Just please, I'm begging you as your mother." I took a few steps back and said coldly, "How can you say he wouldn't? He's addicted to gambling. Even if he didn't steal now, he'd steal later." My mother-in-law stared in disbelief, her lips trembling. "What did you say? Your son is a gambling addict. He mortgaged our house to the bank to borrow money for his habit. If I hadn't gotten out in time, the children and I would have been left with nowhere to live. He would have dragged the three of us down with him." My mother-in-law deflated like a punctured balloon and slumped into the chair. I shot her a look of disgust and made as if to leave, as if struck by a sudden thought. My ex-mother-in-law immediately crawled a few steps toward me on her knees. "I'm begging you, take me to see Zhong Lixia." Seeing her relentless desperation, I decided it was time she got a real taste of despair. I drove her to Zhong Lixia's company. She was 7 months pregnant but was still handling affairs in the company office. The moment we entered, my mother-in-law rushed forward and grabbed her hand. "Lixia, you have to save Xingtong. He's the father of your child. You've always been so good to him. How can you just stand by and watch him get locked up?" Zhong Lixia gave her a cold glance and shook her off. "No, he is not my child's father." The mother-in-law was taken aback and tried to say something more. Zhong Lixia took out a paternity test and placed it in front of her. "My child's father is someone else, but it's not Xiang Xingtong. He stole and sold my company's trade secrets, profiting 5 million yuan in total. He should just go to prison." The mother-in-law's face turned deathly pale. She glanced at the document and swayed on her feet. "You slut, you're carrying some other man's bastard and you deceived him. How could you do this to my son?" The ex-mother-in-law shouted furiously. Zhong Lixia asked her, "Was I not good to him? I kept him company for meals, drinks, and in bed, and I even paid him a salary. Tell me, exactly where did I wrong him?" The ex-mother-in-law was so furious, her chest heaved violently. She raised her hand to strike Zhong Lixia, but I reached out and stopped her. "I'll never forgive him. I'll make sure he goes to jail." Zhong Lixia remained calm, looking at her and speaking slowly and deliberately. My former mother-in-law angrily pushed me away, pointing at me and Zhong Lixia with her finger. "You two cursed people. It's all your fault. You killed him." I exchanged a glance with Zhong Lixia, and we both saw amusement in each other's eyes. The former mother-in-law was so furious she fainted, her eyes rolling back. Xiang Xingtong was sentenced to 7 years. While in prison, he wanted to see Zhong Lixia, but Zhong Lixia didn't want to see him, so I went in her place to visit Xiang Xingtong. Xiang Xingtong was surprised to see me. I told him I was there on Zhong Lixia's behalf. Xiang Xingtong lowered his head in silence. After a moment, he finally spoke. "Have you been back for a while now?" He actually came back too. I suppressed my inner shock and looked at him without a change in expression. "You knew all along that my mother and I were lying to you, yet you pretended not to know." "I wasn't sure before, but now it seems like you foresaw everything and were in a hurry to cut ties with me and get away from my side." "Xiang Xingtong is very clever." I nodded. in our past life, it wasn't me who pushed you, it was my mother. She said she has a dementia diagnosis and isn't afraid of going to jail." He looked up at me earnestly as he explained. I didn't respond to his words. Instead, I asked him, "When did you start gambling?" Xiang Xingtang was taken aback. "After I got together with her, I had a bit of money, so," I looked him straight in the eye. "Why did you take out a second mortgage on the house?" Xiang Xingtang cleared his throat and said urgently, "Feng Hui, listen to me. Zhong Lixia has money. As long as I'm with her, she'll give me money, lots and lots of it. By then, forget about one house." Even I laughed, even her company. "Then why are you here now? What makes you think she'd want a man who's a gambler?" He was speechless, finally whimpering in a low voice, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault, I brought this on myself." I asked him, "Is this apology for me, or for her? Is it for the two of us you ruined in our previous life, or for me in this life after being reborn?" He stared at me in panic, eyes wide. "Lixia, she also." As I was leaving, Xiang Xingtang timidly asked me, "How is Lixia this time?" "It's a boy, right?" I said sarcastically. "Didn't your mother tell you? It's not your child, it's a mixed-race girl. Why is it that ever since you were arrested she hasn't shown up at all? Don't you know why?" He suddenly looked up and glared at me. "You're lying to me." I gave him a meaningful smile. In pain and fury, he slammed the table in frustration, cursing me and Zhong Lixia loudly, before being restrained by the prison guards who came in and dragged away. Of course I was lying to him. I wanted to torment him. I wanted to drive him crazy. Xiang Xingtang's house was repossessed by the bank. His ex-mother-in-law was evicted. She sold her family home to pay off the high-interest loan he owed. With nowhere else to go, she came to my office, demanding I take her in. I refused. "Feng Hui, when my son took out that loan, you two weren't divorced yet. If you don't pay me back, I'll just stay here and harass you. Do you think I won't go to your boss and cause a scene? You don't believe me? I'll make a fuss all the way to your superiors." She was certain I couldn't do anything about her. I patiently explained, "Our divorce agreement clearly states each of us is responsible for our own debts. Even if you go all the way to the central government, it won't help. There's nothing they can do." The ex-mother-in-law was momentarily short of breath. She rolled her eyes and said again, "Feng Hui, I'm the grandmother of those two girls. We're family by blood. You can't stop me from seeing my granddaughters." "What, wasn't it you who gave the child laxatives and pretended to forget to pick her up? Now you suddenly remember you're their grandmother. Do you think they'll even recognize you?" The ex-mother-in-law was startled and asked fearfully, "How do you know that? You've done so many despicable things." "What don't I know? Your son said in my past life, it was you who killed me, not him, and told me to come after you, for revenge." The ex-mother-in-law hastily stepped back, blurting out, "Nonsense, you're lying, he's lying, it wasn't me, I didn't do it on purpose." If Xiang Hangtang got a second chance at life, how could his mother-in-law not have one too? I let out a cold laugh and stepped closer to her one step at a time. Watching her panic, I leaned in and whispered in her ear, "As long as you're still alive, sooner or later I'll kill you myself." My ex-mother-in-law fled as if running for her life. A few days later, an old scavenger drowned in a nearby man-made lake. Citizens who had seen her said the old man had gone mad. Babbling to everyone, she didn't push her, it wasn't on purpose. Xiang Hangtang went completely insane in prison and was forcibly sent to a psychiatric hospital. Later, while trying to escape by climbing out a window, he fell from an upper floor and died. Zhong Lixia took the child and emigrated abroad, leaving the company to her younger brother, Zhong Liqing. Zhong Liqing came to me and handed me a bank card. "My sister asked me to give this to you. There's 2 million in it," she said. "She doesn't ask for your forgiveness, she only hopes you'll take the money so she can have some peace of mind. The password is the date you first met." I took the bank card. A text from Zhong Lixia came in on my phone. "I'm sorry, all the misfortune in your past life came from me. I hope that without me in this life, you can live a long and peaceful life." Her right or wrong no longer mattered to me. What mattered was that all the culprits had been punished. I took the money, quit my job, and found a relatively easy one, so I could pick my child up from school every day. I'm just an ordinary person. All I can give my child is my wholehearted companionship and a childhood not deprived of love. I also hope that one day they'll make something of themselves and, no longer impoverished by love, won't lose themselves. The end. Story 2. On the day Gu Yanchen won the World Billionaire Charity Award, I was declared by the doctor to be at the end of my life because I didn't have the money to replace my artificial heart. The host on TV asked Gu Yanchen to call the person he regretted the most. I picked up the phone and heard Gu Yanchen ask me, "Did you ever regret leaving me for money back then?" I looked at the huge bill for the artificial heart replacement and chuckled. "Gu Yanchen, you're so rich, could you lend me 200,000 yuan?" The phone was suddenly hung up. I watched Gu Yanchen on TV say coldly, "I have no regrets now." He didn't know that back then, when he had heart failure, I secretly replaced my heart with his. On the day Gu Yanchen won the World Billionaire Charity Award, I was declared by the doctor to be at the end of my life because I didn't have the money to replace my artificial heart again. The host on TV asked Gu Yanchen to call the person he regretted the most. He dialed my number without hesitation. I picked up the phone and heard Gu Yanchen ask me, "Did you ever regret leaving me for money back then?" I looked at the huge bill for the artificial heart replacement and chuckled. "Gu Yanchen, you're so rich, could you lend me 200,000 yuan? The phone was suddenly hung up. I watched Gu Yanchen on TV say coldly, "I have no regrets now." He didn't know that back then, when he had heart failure, I secretly replaced my heart with his. After the live broadcast ended, I immediately received a transfer of 200,000 yuan from Gu Yanchen. I was stunned for a moment, and my heart was filled with mixed feelings. After paying the medical bills with this money, I suddenly heard a familiar voice outside the ward. I looked through the crack of the door and saw Gu Yanchen's figure. We hadn't seen each other for 7 years, and it seemed that time had left no trace on him. The only thing that had changed was that the person beside him was no longer me. The award-giving party had just ended, and he rushed to the hospital without even having time to change his clothes. It was because his little girlfriend had a bit of a stomachache. I saw him affectionately hold Lu Qinyao in his arms. I lowered my head, trying to pretend I didn't see them, and quietly closed the door. Gu Yanchen suddenly yanked the door open. I was startled and suddenly looked up, meeting his eyes. Gu Yanchen's eyes swept over my body with piercing coldness. "We haven't seen each other for a long time. Aren't you going to say hello to me?" I looked at him, my lips slightly parting. Thousands of words welled up in my heart, but when they reached my lips, they condensed into, "Gu Yanchen, lend me another 300,000 yuan. Gu Yanchen was stunned for a moment, and a bit of anger ignited in his cold eyes. He grabbed my hand. "After not seeing each other for 7 years, this is all you want to say to me?" The dense needle holes on my wrist sent waves of dull pain. I took a deep breath and said softly, "Mr. Gu is so rich, if you don't lend me money, I'm afraid Miss Lu will misunderstand." Gu Yanchen was a bit taken aback, and his eyes showed some complexity. Just as the man was about to say something, Lu Qinyao hugged his arm. "Honey, is this your ex-wife?" Lu Qinyao looked at me and said in a somewhat pitiful tone, "What can 300,000 yuan do? Yanchen spends 500,000 yuan on a pair of shoes for me. It's a pity that Ms. Li didn't know how to cherish. If you hadn't heartlessly left Yanchen, how could I have met him?" I remained silent, my thoughts going back to the past. I met Gu Yanchen in college, and then we fell in love and were together for 5 years. At that time, he wasn't yet a trillion-dollar entrepreneur. My body wasn't as bad as it is now either. 2 poor students, both orphans, had for the first time someone they cared about the most. We worked hard to have a small family of our own. Just as our careers were starting to improve, Gu Yanchen was diagnosed with a serious heart disease. Treatment and transplantation surgery would cost a large sum of money. We spent all our savings for starting a business to raise the medical expenses. I took on several part-time jobs every day, ate only 1 meal a day, and spent money frugally. I worked desperately just to save a meager amount of money for medicine. We even replaced the medicine for treatment with the cheapest inferior generic drugs, but still, we couldn't wait for a suitable heart. Just as I watched Gu Yanchen getting thinner day by day, withering away, and was on the verge of despair, the doctor came to me and told me that the matching was successful. The person whose heart matched Gu Yanchen's was me. All my thoughts stopped. Gu Yanchen affectionately kissed Lu Qinyao's forehead, his eyes filled with endless tenderness. "If it weren't for her heartlessness, how could I have met you, my little angel? I'll buy you that bag worth 300,000 yuan you like when we get back. Next time, choose something more expensive. Your husband can afford it." Watching them, the pain from the pinpricks on my wrist seemed to pierce my heart, making it hard for me to breathe. I took back my freedom from Gu Yanchen's hand that had never let go. I no longer wanted to be the reference for them to prove their love. Just as I was about to leave, Lu Qinyao deliberately or unintentionally stretched out her foot and tripped me. "Oh, sisterly, how could you be so careless?" I fell to my knees, and the medical report in my hand scattered at Gu Yanchen's feet. Seeing me fall, Gu Yanchen's face tightened, and he reached out to help me. Lu Qinyao grabbed his hand and exclaimed, "What is this?" Gu Yanchen's gaze was attracted by the report on the ground. He picked it up and quickly scanned it. "Artificial heart replacement." A flash of anger crossed Gu Yanchen's face. He threw the medical report in my face. "Li Muge, I didn't expect you to use such despicable means to cheat for money. You're really the same as you were 7 years ago. Everything is for money, and there's only money in your eyes." I got up and looked at Gu Yanchen's healthy body. A faint smile curved the corner of my mouth. and I silently picked up the medical report. "Mr. Gu knows I like money, why not lend me some more?" Lu Qinyao was so emotional that she shed tears. She cried and shook the man's strong arm, but the look in her eyes when she looked at me was full of mockery and malice. "Honey, maybe it's true, and it was sisterly who left you back then, which allowed you to get a heart donated by a kind-hearted person. Shall we help her?" These words seemed to remind Gu Yanchen of the fact that I had left him for money. The anger and hesitation in Gu Yanchen's eyes were instantly frozen by coldness. "The hearts of those kind-hearted people can't save a heartless person. She doesn't deserve it." Gu Yanchen pulled Lu Qinyao and turned around. Lu Qinyao was still pleading, but the moment she looked back at me, the curve of her lips was so mocking and vicious. I picked up the medical report that was full of Lu Qinyao's footprints. The mechanical heart suddenly had an abnormal tremor. My pupils dilated, and the figures of the two gradually blurred. After a long time, I wiped the blood oozing from the corner of my mouth and looked at the words "artificial heart replacement." My fingers stroked the scar on my chest that had been there for 7 years. Gu Yanchen still doesn't know until now. The heart beating in his chest is mine 7 years ago, because we couldn't find a suitable heart for a long time. Gu Yanchen's body was getting weaker day by day. The artificial heart technology wasn't mature. In theory, it could maintain basic life functions, but there were too many hidden dangers. After the matching was successful, I replaced my heart with his. I myself replaced it with an artificial heart with a theoretical lifespan of 7 years to save money. It was the cheapest kind. Since then, I would occasionally feel a sharp pain in my chest. Daily coughing up blood and sudden weakness became normal, and because of the lack of money, the surgery to replace the new artificial heart was postponed again and again. Now, it has been 7 years. The artificial heart in my chest felt the 7th bout of pain. I know it has long been on the verge of its limit. After leaving the hospital, I returned to the rented house. The room is small, damp, and extremely cold in winter. It's unbearably hot in summer, but it's cheap. Gu Yanchen and I rented this place back then, and here we imagined our future. After learning that my heart matched his, I pretended to be a gold digger and took out the divorce agreement, wanting to divorce Gu Yanchen. Gu Yanchen and I had been together for 5 years. No matter how hard and tiring it was, I never complained once and always stayed by his side. He knew too well how much I loved him and couldn't believe that I would leave him. I also knew that he loved me deeply. If he knew everything, he would never allow me to trade my life for his. To save him, I had to be cruel and pretend that I had had enough of following him, enduring endless hardships, enough of following him, living a life without any hope, enough of eating cheap medicine every day, having 1 meal a day, drinking cold water when thirsty, and eating steamed buns when hungry, and spending money as frugally as possible. I told him that I had had enough of everything. I still remember that day clearly. The boy who had always been strong and never afraid of suffering or bleeding shed tears for the first time. He signed the divorce agreement while crying. I also signed my name on the organ donation agreement. After the surgery, I left Gu Yanchen completely with a bad reputation. I returned to the rental house where we had spent 5 years together, quietly waiting for the death that I had embraced with my own hands. I just didn't expect that I would meet Gu Yanchen again one day. Now, he is getting further and further away, having become the ideal appearance we had both imagined, but I can never go back. Watching him be high-spirited on the news, a hint of sadness suddenly welled up in my heart, but I also felt a bit relieved. The ringtone of my phone interrupted my thoughts. I picked up the phone, and it was the bank calling. The bank told me that the owner of the previous 200,000 yuan transfer had made an operational error. I needed to return the money immediately, otherwise, I would face criminal liability. After hanging up the phone, I smiled bitterly, not knowing what to say. After a moment of silence, I called my best friend and asked her to find me a job to pay back the money. Gu Yanchen hates me so much. He will surely be happy to know that someone like me, who only has money in her eyes, needs to pay in installments. He will even watch me exhaust myself to pay off the debt. Because of my heart condition, my body often feels weak, and I can't do many jobs. I can only make a living by doing occasional odd jobs. My best friend Xinyu, who knew about my physical condition, found me a job as a banquet waiter. The work is relatively easy, and I can earn 500 yuan a day. When I put on the waiter's uniform and a mask and was delivering wine at the banquet, I saw Gu Yanchen again. He was wearing a high-end suit, with a tall and straight posture and an extraordinary bearing. Lu Qinyao was wearing a luxurious evening dress, looking graceful. The two of them were arm in arm, like a pair of celestial lovers, being surrounded and praised by everyone. I took one look and immediately lowered my head. Gu Yanchen, who was holding the wine, didn't recognize me. Just as I was about to turn around, Lu Qinyao suddenly said, "Hey, how do you do your job as a waiter? Can't you see that you've spilled wine on my dress?" I stopped in my tracks and then noticed that a part of Lu Qinyao's skirt was wet. I didn't say anything, just lowered my head and used a tissue to wipe the stain for Lu Qinyao. Gu Yanchen looked at me, his brows slightly furrowed, and his lips pressed into a straight line. The malice in Lu Qinyao's eyes spread, and she suddenly kicked me in the chest. A sharp pain hit me, and I fell to the ground, crying out in pain, "Don't touch me with your dirty hands, security, throw her out." There was anger on Lu Qinyao's face, but the pride at the corner of her mouth couldn't be suppressed, although only my eyes were exposed. But in that instant of eye contact, Gu Yanchen still recognized me. His lips moved, and a flash of heartache in his eyes quickly disappeared, replaced by endless mockery. He raised his hand to stop the security guards and pulled off my mask. "Li Muge, when you see your ex-husband, why don't you say hello?" Lu Qinyao pretended to recognize me only then and hurriedly pulled me up. "Sister Li, it's you, your brother Chen's ex-wife. How could you be a waiter here?" The hall seemed to suddenly press the mute button, and it became completely silent in an instant. Everyone's eyes were fixed on me. Then there was a field of mockery. "I heard that Mr. Gu's ex-wife left him for money when he was in the most difficult time. Ha, it serves such a bitch right, abandoning Mr. Gu and ending up as a waiter. She really deserves it." I don't know who splashed red wine on my head then. Wine came from all directions and wine glasses smashed on me one after another, shattering. The dark red wine and bright red blood mixed together and flowed all over the ground. Obviously, these people who were trying to curry favor with Gu Yanchen wanted to vent his anger for him. Blood flowed down my forehead and across my cheeks, but I didn't feel a bit of pain. I remained silent. Gu Yanchen looked at me, the coldness in his eyes unreserved. "Li Muge, why don't you speak? Is it because you need to be paid to talk to me?" Gu Yanchen sneered, and a wave of mockery also rose around him. "You came to be a waiter just to borrow money from me, right? I'll satisfy you." He waved his hand and asked someone to bring more than a dozen bottles of high-end red wine and opened them one by one. "As long as you drink all this wine, I'll give you 300,000 yuan. Now." He threw the money on the ground, making the wine on the ground look blood red. There was an unresolvable chill on Gu Yanchen's face. Everyone in the living room watched this farce with mockery and cold eyes. "Since I replaced the artificial heart, my body has become weaker and weaker. I can't even lift slightly heavy things. I can no longer run or jump. And even walking a few more steps makes me out of breath." Alcohol, which ordinary people use to numb themselves if I touch a little more, it may cause the artificial heart to stop working. I raised my head, looked at the man, and tugged at the corner of my mouth, finally speaking. "Then the 200,000 yuan doesn't need to be repaid either, right?" Gu Yanchen was suddenly taken aback, and anger rose in his bone-chilling cold eyes. Then a tight grinding sound came from his mouth. "Fine." Upon getting his answer, I smiled, then immediately grabbed the wine and poured it into my mouth. My body had long been overburdened, and the doctor had specifically told me not to touch a single drop of alcohol. The pungency filled my mouth, and my body instinctively retched. Almost vomiting, I forced myself to swallow the wine, then grabbed bottle after bottle. Everyone watched this farce with mockery. Only Gu Yanchen's face gradually turned gloomy and dark after another bottle of wine. Seeing that I was about to pick up another one, Gu Yanchen finally couldn't help but grab my hand. "Li Muge, you'll die without money, right?" Looking at his scarlet eyes, I nodded. "You're right. Without money, I'll die." He angrily shook me off. "Fine, then drink it all up. Drink to your heart's content." My body felt as heavy as if a huge boulder was tied to it. The artificial heart in my chest seemed to stop beating. I smiled, took a light breath, and grabbed the wine bottle to pour it into my mouth. Gu Yanchen couldn't take it anymore. He snatched the wine from my hand and let out a beast-like roar. "That's enough." My body could no longer hold on, and I collapsed to the ground. Fine shards of glass pierced into my body, staining the ground scarlet. Hearing the commotion, my best friend Xinyu rushed over in a hurry, and in horror, she held me in her arms, shouting at Gu Yanchen, "Muge gave you her heart. She's relying on an artificial heart now. She can't drink alcohol at all. She could die. Do you know that?" Hearing Qinyu's shout, Gu Yanchen was like being struck by lightning, and his whole body froze instantly. The mockery and coldness on his face instantly crumbled. What replaced them was endless shock and panic. His eyes widened as he stared fixedly at me in the pool of blood. His lips trembled, as if he wanted to say something, but it was as if all his strength had been drained, and he couldn't utter a single word. After what seemed like a long time, he finally spoke. "Li Muge, I never thought you'd stoop so low as to make up such lies for money." I stood up shakily, looking at him with a cold smile. "To him, once I left him when he was in the most pain and difficulty because of money. Now that he has achieved success and fame, this shameless woman, naturally could also abandon my dignity and tell lies for money." I met his disgusted and cold gaze. Obviously, I no longer had a real heart, but at this moment, My chest inexplicably ached. Lee Muge, you really went to great lengths to deceive me. I slowly broke free from Chinyu's support, although my body was already overburdened, but I still managed to stand steadily on my own. I looked at Gu Yanchen and smiled. I didn't think you found it. After saying that, I glanced at my best friend Chinyu. A flash of surprise crossed her eyes, then she seemed to realize something, and her slightly open mouth closed with difficulty. Tears in her eyes couldn't stop flowing. She didn't understand why I still refused to tell the truth. Gu Yanchen sneered, "You're still as shameless as ever." I just smiled but didn't say anything more. Seeing my attitude, Gu Yanchen seemed to become even angrier. He was about to say something when Lu Qinyao suddenly grabbed his hand. "Honey, Sister Lee must have her reasons for pretending to be the heart donor to cheat you out of your money. Just help her." Gu Yanchen glanced at me, and the anger on his face subsided a bit. He coldly signed a check and threw it at me. "Fine, I heard from your best friend that you'll die if you drink. Then this money is for you to buy a graveyard." I bent down, picked up the check on the ground, and gently shook it. "Thank you, Mr. Gu, for your generosity." Seeing me staggering and almost falling, Lu Qinyao, as if out of sympathy, walked up to me and helped me, but the nails of her hand dug deeply into my skin. "Sister Lee, no matter how little you cherish your body, you can't sell your heart." I forcefully pulled my hand out, and Lu Qinyao pretended to be pushed by me and fell into Gu Yanchen's arms. "Sister Lee, I just wanted to help you." Lu Qinyao looked at me with a pitiful expression, squeezing out tears from the corners of her eyes. Gu Yanchen's anger surged, and his eyes were filled with endless disappointment. He immediately called the security guards and drove Chinyu and me out in the cold wind. Chinyu's tears finally couldn't help but burst out. She looked at me with heartache. "Why don't you tell him even now? Clearly, if you say it, you won't have to endure all this." I smiled and just shook the check in my hand. "Things are already in the past, what's the point of saying so much? Look at this 300,000 yuan, it would take me a long time to earn this." Chinyu looked at me and still couldn't help asking, "Is it really worth it? He humiliated you like that." I remained silent. 7 years ago, I gave my heart to Gu Yanchen, never thinking about whether it was worth it or not. I just wanted to save him, that's all. Thinking of this, perhaps because the past memories were too complicated, I suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and my vision became blurred. Beside my ear, I heard Chinyu's anxious shout. When I woke up again, I found myself in the hospital. The white ward hurt my eyes. Chinyu was guarding the bedside. Seeing me wake up, she quickly held my hand. "Muge, you scared me to death. How are you feeling?" I opened my mouth, but my throat was extremely dry. After a while, the doctor examined my body. With a solemn expression, he said to me, "Miss Lee, your body is no longer suitable for an artificial heart. If you can't match a suitable heart within 3 months, you'll be in danger." I fell silent, and Chinyu burst into tears. The chance of finding a suitable heart within 3 months was too slim. This almost meant that I only had 3 months left in my life. Perhaps God had seen the ending in advance, so it made me meet Gu Yanchen again before I died. I was surprisingly calm. I gently wiped away Chinyu's tears. "What are you crying for? I can still live for 3 months. In the last 3 months of my life, I didn't want to lie in the hospital. All the time I asked Chinyu to go through the discharge procedures for me. After being discharged, I used the 300,000 yuan to choose a good graveyard for myself. When I was alive, I never had a home of my own. After I die, thanks to Gu Yanchen, I can finally have a place to rest." After choosing the graveyard, I went to a funeral supplies store and personally selected my burial objects. After returning to the rental house, my best friend Chinyu suddenly sent me a link. "Quick, take a look at this." I opened the link in confusion. It was a video from that celebration dinner. The video clearly recorded how I was kicked down by Lu Qinyao, exposed by Gu Yanchen, and finally drenched in wine by everyone and knelt on the ground in a sorry state. The video clearly captured my face, and the person who posted it also added a caption, "The ex-wife of the trillion-dollar President Gu Yanchen. She left him when he had a heart disease for money. Now that President Gu is rich, she lies that she donated her heart to him to cheat money." As a result, I, an unknown person, instantly became a top trending topic on various platforms. The whole network knew that Gu Yanchen, a star entrepreneur worth trillions, had an ex-wife, and they also knew how heartless and ungrateful this ex-wife was. She abandoned President Gu back then. Now that she sees he's rich, she comes back to borrow money. How shameless is that borrowing? I think it's just asking for it. Mr. Gu received a heart donation from a kind-hearted person. How can she have the nerve to claim it as her own? For a while, I was severely criticized. Many netizens started to dig into my personal information, and they found out my address and other details. Some even splashed paint and threw garbage at my place. I seem to have become a person that everyone wanted to condemn, like Pan Jinlian. Regarding this, I didn't defend myself or express any opinions. I already guessed who did this. Jinyu was extremely anxious and wanted to come forward to clarify things for me, but I knew that we had no power or influence. Even if she told the whole truth, no one would believe her. They might even regard her as my accomplice and cyber-bully her together. Just then, my phone received a message: meet me at the coffee shop in Shanghai building. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Lu Qinyao had been waiting for a long time. A flash of pride crossed her eyes, and then the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking arc. Yo, isn't this sister Li Muge? How did you end up like this? Why did you do this? Lu Qinyao snorted disdainfully. Do you think Yanchen really loves you? He just pities you. I hope you recognize your position. You're just his ex-wife who abandoned him. Everything he has now was achieved with my help. I'm the one he loves the most. Lu Qinyao looked down at me haughtily. With pride in her eyes, a sharp pain stabbed at my heart. After a long silence, I looked up and met her eyes. At least, I saved his life. Lu Qingyao's face changed, as if she had heard a funny joke. She laughed for a long time, then stopped. Then go tell Gu Yanchen, see if he believes you, his heartless ex-wife, or me, his wife who has shared weal and woe with him. Don't be ridiculous, ex-wife sister. Until Lu Qinyao left gracefully, I didn't say another word. She was right. In the eyes of outsiders, I was, and always would be, the heartless person who abandoned Gu Yanchen. When I got home, I found that all the news and cyber bullying about me on the internet had disappeared. After turning on my phone, I found that Gu Yanchen had called me more than a dozen times. Although we were divorced, I was still his ex-wife after all. My bad reputation might also make him lose face. He must have called so many times because of these things. But I was about to die. After thinking about it, I finally didn't call back. I packed up all the items in the room, putting all the past memories into boxes. Then I returned to the old house. I didn't want this place full of beautiful memories to be tainted by my death. As for what would happen after my death, I left it all to my best friend Xinyu. Maybe I would look ugly when I died, but I thought she wouldn't be scared. After all, it would be the last time we saw each other in this world. She should forgive my last prank. I returned to the old house next to the orphanage. I didn't know how Lu Jin would react if he knew the truth. Now I didn't care at all, nor was I concerned. I just took Lele and went back to the house where I grew up as a child. I was an orphan and grew up in an orphanage. The first time I left home was when I went to college. On the first day of entering the campus, that was also the first time I saw Lu Jin. All the past events had now turned into heavy memories. Looking at the yard full of weeds, everything in the past was as messy as these weeds. I cleared the weeds in the yard, as if I was sorting out my past. After cleaning everything up, my heart was slightly freed from the pain of impending death. As if hearing the sound, a bent figure walked in. Is that little Li? You're back. I turned around and saw an old figure looking at me with surprise in her eyes. Grandma Lu. I felt a long, lost sense of familiarity. I suddenly realized that I wasn't alone. When I was young, it was Grandma Lu who took care of me through the most difficult days. It was also Grandma Lu's careful care and guidance that kept me from going astray. The moment I saw my loved one, the calm I had forced and the grievance in my heart turned into tears in the corners of my eyes. I couldn't help crying. After that, Grandma Lu just comforted me. She never asked me what kind of pain I had experienced outside. She was afraid of evoking bad memories. Instead, she made my favorite braised pork for me and smiled happily when she saw me eating with oil all over my mouth. So, days passed like this. I came to the stone bridge where I had looked into the distance countless times again. The mountains in front of me were surrounded by thick clouds and mist. At the foot of the mountain, pedestrians became small black and white silhouettes. At a glance, I felt that the mountains were so high and people were so tiny. The rumors that should have been completely suppressed flared up again because of a simple daily sharing. The salesperson who introduced the graveyard to me normally shared his work experience. There was a very fair-skinned, tall and beautiful big sister who came to buy a graveyard before. She said she wanted to find a tomb with a good view and good sunlight. It was the first time I heard such a request, so I asked her if it was the wish of an elderly person in the family. She said it was for herself. My feelings at that time were really below. There was also a picture of my profile, although it wasn't very clear, but it was enough to tell it was me. This matter immediately attracted a lot of attention. Previously, I was seen as a person who loved wealth and abandoned Gu Yanchen. Now, they found that there seemed to be a big secret hidden in me. As a result, many people started looking for my news and searching for my past again. The things related to me and my experiences were dug out one by one. There was a young girl who came to ask me if she could pre-order sunflowers. It was the first time I heard of using sunflowers for a funeral. The girl said that sunflowers face the light, And they could follow her to find a warm place underground. Later, I found out that she was buying them for herself. Only then did everyone understand that I was about to die. The public opinion about me on the internet immediately reversed. So President Gu's ex-wife is dying. She pretended to be a waiter at the banquet. She probably wanted to see President Gu one last time. Sigh. Maybe she also wanted to borrow money from President Gu to save her life. Then, the experience of my artificial heart replacement was made public, and it was completely revealed by a doctor this time. Everyone fell silent. My former attending doctor couldn't help but come forward to explain. Ms. Lee once donated her heart, then replaced it with an artificial heart. She also asked us not to disclose her identity to the patient. She left alone and endured everything. Sigh. Ms. Lee, who uses an artificial heart, can't physically bear so much alcohol. I just hope her health will improve. The more netizens dug into my story, the more sympathetic they became towards me. Almost no one was willing to believe that I was such a heartless person. Finally, the chief surgeon who had removed my heart appeared and explained everything. Over the years, I've always been thinking about whether I should make Ms. Lee's story public, but every time I was about to say it, I couldn't help but think of the way she pleaded with us. So many years have passed now. I never thought Mo would have such a hard life. If I had known, I should have made it public earlier. The matter of me donating my heart to Gu Yanchen eventually caused a huge stir. However, I in the small courtyard knew nothing about all this. As usual, I went out to the vegetable market to buy groceries, trying my best to leave my mark with the last bit of my life. A speeding van crashed into me. After a feeling of dizziness, when I woke up again, I was already on the hospital bed. Seeing me wake up, Jinyu held my hand and cried non-stop. She knew I was going to die, and she was ready to accept this result, but she didn't want me to suffer these hardships before I died. Suddenly, the door of the ward was slammed open. Gu Yanchen gasped for breath, holding on to the doorframe, and then rushed in. His sweat had soaked his clothes, his body was covered in dust, and his hands and feet were full of abrasions. His eyes were red, and he held up the crumpled diagnosis in his hand, looking at me with a pale face on the hospital bed. His voice was hoarse. Why didn't you tell me? Looking at the tears seeping from his eyes, I wasn't happy about my name being cleared. I just felt a sudden sense of loss. I smiled and said nothing. At this point, everything didn't matter anymore. Gu Yanchen's tears could no longer be held back. He tried his best to suppress his sobs, but still cried like a child in front of me. I'll find the best doctors in the world for you and use all my resources and connections to find a suitable heart. Looking at his blood-shot eyes, thousands of words in my heart turned into one word when they reached my lips. Okay. After that, Gu Yanchen went through the discharge procedures for me. He took me back to the old house we used to have, but he didn't leave. Instead, he stayed by my side to take care of me. Watching him tidy up the flowers and plants in the yard, I was silent for a long time and finally spoke. Ms. Lu will be angry if you do this. Gu Yanchen paused slightly and turned to look at me. It doesn't matter, I'll divorce her, and a suitable heart for you will be found soon. And I'm also investigating the person who hit you with the car that day. I will never let go of anyone who hurts you. Watching him carefully fertilize the seeds, I didn't know what this sentence meant at this time. Famous doctors from home and abroad came one after another, under their treatment and with tens of millions of yuan's worth of medical care and recuperation. My body gradually recovered, and I had some strength. However, a heart for replacement was still not found, because I have a rare blood type, and there are very few hearts that can match mine. I actually knew it long ago how difficult it was to find a suitable heart. After donating my kidney to Gu Yanchen, I always thought that God arranged for me, who was in the same miserable situation and had the same blood type as him, to be together with him. Maybe it was for that moment in these last days. It would be nice if I could die so peacefully. A few days later, Gu Yanchen suddenly told me that he had found a suitable heart. Just as I was feeling puzzled, Gu Yanchen knocked me out. Before I lost consciousness, a strong sense of unease welled up in my heart. Gu Yanchen, wearing a medical gown, gently stroked my face with his hand, full of tenderness and reluctance. Once she chose death for me, now, it's my turn. Start the operation. When I woke up again, Gu Yanchen had disappeared. I only saw my best friend Xin Yu and a police officer. After the police officer's explanation, I finally learned the truth. It turned out that it was Lu Qinyao who hired someone to hit me with the car that day. After Gu Yanchen learned the truth, he killed her to avenge me. Knowing that his crime couldn't be concealed for long, Gu Yanchen used his last time to transplant his heart to me, so that I could survive. He even transferred all his property to my name. Finally, he died in the operating room. Hearing this, an indescribable complexity welled up in my heart. After being discharged from the hospital, I personally held a funeral for Gu Yanchen. I buried him in the graveyard I had chosen. I will plant flowers all around it. In the coming spring, this place will surely turn into a beautiful sea of flowers. He would be happy to see it, right?